Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Coffee with Tea. I'm your host, the amazing T Street. Y'all, this is an interview I've wanted to do for at least 10 years, probably a little bit longer, but but at least for the last 10 years, I've wanted to do this interview. I want to put it on the screen. Brandon says, "Hey to my favorite two ladies. I'm still waiting for you to come to Charlotte. So excited about tonight's topic. Congratulations, Tracey. We're going to have a good time." And you know what he said, we're going to have a good time.
Yes.
I mean, hey, Courtney Kerrigan, we're glad to see you on. Y'all, tonight's guest is fire. When I say to you, it's one of the people I like. A lot of people. It takes a lot to earn my respect. A lot to earn my respect. Tonight's topic: transformational schools start with transfer. Good evening, Val. Start with transformational leaders. I believe that to my core. I believe that the reason that we cannot in mass change the trajectory of our schools is because we refuse to get to the heart of it all, which is changing and transforming the leaders of our schools. And so tonight's guest, her name is Tracey Colson. She's from TC Education Consulting. Y'all, when I tell you she's done it all, currently in addition to TC Consulting, she is the director of school improvement and family engagement for Whitehall City Schools. She was lead administrator in Columbus City Schools from 2015 to 2022. She was an assistant principal for 8 years. She was a teacher for 7 years. So she literally has been at every rung and worked her way up. But what I love about Tracey, and I believe to my core, if you are not engaged in the work of transforming educational leaders, you're never transform schools. Tracey is very clear. She's going to talk a lot about her philosophy tonight. Um, a lot of people call themselves things that they're not. Tracey Colson is a transformational leader. You're not a transformational school leader if you've never transformed a school, period, with two T's on the end. You must have transformed a school. Tracey Colson took the lowest performing middle school in the largest school district in Ohio from the very bottom to number 2 in 4 years. Y'all, that's transformational leadership. And so tonight, y'all, I know you want to pick her brain. I'm going to be asking questions tonight that pick that brain. Good evening, Stephanie. Good evening, Kaylee. Good evening. I think it's Lamika. Good evening. We're excited to have you. If you have questions, put them in the chat and I'll put them on the screen. I see folks on here from California. Come on, you educators. Good evening, Allison. I've got a lot of questions, but I know some of you have some specific questions you want to ask. So, Tracey, we're going to jump in. Is that all right with you?
I'm ready.
Tracey is ready. Now, the first question that I have for you, Tracey, is about big picture. I want to do some framing it for people. This is big picture transformation. My question is, from your vantage point, working with schools and school districts, what does transformational education really look like in practice? And how is it different from surface level reform?
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be on here. Thank you, Coach, here for having me this evening. When you think about transformative education, we have to emphasize people plus systems, not programs. And I think where schools get caught up or districts get caught up, they are focusing on the programs and they're not focusing on the people and the systems. And so transformation isn't about adding initiatives, because I think we have too many initiatives. It's about changing how people think, work, and lead every day in the schools. And I think that's the big overarching problem from now sitting in a district level position and being a teacher, an assistant principal, a teacher on special assignment, and a former principal. We're too busy worried about initiatives, and we're not worried about changing people. So when you think about surface level reform, that's like new curriculum, programs, and buzzwords. That's all people are focused on: the curriculum, buzzwords, and education. But that's not really a transformation. You got to shift the culture. You got to shift people thinking, their behavior, their decision making. and adult practices. And notice I haven't said anything about kids yet. It's all about changing adult behavior, how systems support your vision. And I just think it's important for the adults to think about their behavior, look in the mirror. How are we responding to challenges? And are the things that we're responding to, are they student centered? Because at the end of the day, our goal is student achievement, but we have to shift the mindset of the adults. And so if the adults haven't changed, then the system hasn't changed. And that's the big problem in education. It's the adult behavior, it's not the child behavior.
So you all are hearing that. Tracey, can you see that the comments are coming up on the screen?
Let me see the comments. Okay.
Can you see them?
Oh, I do see them.
Okay, so keep looking. I'll keep putting the comments up so that you can see. You've got folks on here affirming you, Keisha Fletcher Bates is like, yes. Other people are like, I'm excited to see how she did this. When I talked about what you did, my friend Allison from California, Stockton, California. I was out there last week and had dinner with Allison. She's like, I'm excited to hear how she did this. So as you are hearing, Tracey is saying it's really not about the individual students. We've not gotten there yet. It's about changing systems and adult behaviors. Ooh, that's gonna be fire. Now y'all know that's gonna hit some people close to their collars. So we're gonna don't internalize yet, y'all. Don't internalize. So the second question that I have for you, Tracey, and by the way, if you all have questions, put it in the chat. What are some of the most common mindset shifts you see teachers and principals needing to make in order to lead meaningful, lasting change in their schools?
Ooh, Lord, coach here.
Mindset, y'all, mindset.
Everybody wants to be in control. So when you talk about from control to capacity building, are we really building the capacity in our schools? A lot of times we're very reactive. Majority of the time, districts and a lot of times building leaders are reactive to problems instead of really being strategic about their year from start to finish. They lead in a reactive state of mind, and they're always about compliance and not commitment. So they're just checking off a box. And so I know, look at your face, Coach here. And people probably don't, I mean, this is from the lens of TC. This is all from my own personal lens, being battle tested in my experience. The problem is we like to focus on compliance and checking a box and not really being committed to the work. And many leaders were trained to manage schools and not really lead people. And so I think that's the difference.
Ooh, say that statement again.
You know, many leaders are trained to manage school and not lead people. And so I think that's another gap in education, because leaders are working on managing a school instead of leading people. And that's a lot of work of really leading people. And so what does leading people look like? You know, leaders must stop, and they want to fix everybody. I was not in a business of fixing teachers at Mifflin. My goal was to really develop the teachers, coach them, provide some clear directions and clarity, but then also build trust, because I think that's also a piece of it as well. They have to trust you. You have to be clear. You can't say one thing 1 minute and change it the next day. And you have to be in the mindset of coaching and developing the teachers as well. And so leadership is about influence. I think it's about alignment. Is the work aligned? Are you aligning the work? And it's not about authority. I think a lot of times people get in these roles because they want to have power, and it's not about authority. And you know me, Coach here, I like to be in the limelight. I don't need for people to recognize me and my work, because it's a collective team effort. And I just think if we can get leaders to shift their mindset from managing schools and learning how to really lead people, develop them and coach them, and have true clarity and direction, I think sky's the limit.
I put on the screen, but I'll read it to you. Andre has the follow-up question. I think for that, it's a natural follow-up. What are some of the deficits teachers face that you've encountered?
Oh, Andre, that's a really good question. I think it starts on their training as well on a college campus. I think a lot of our institutions are not preparing our teachers anymore. they do the theory part, but they're not really doing learning how to put the theory into practice. And so a lot of the teachers, their deficit, oh, that's a big wide range, because when you look at elementary, teachers are not coming in prepared on how to manage their classroom and also be a teacher. I think when you look at on the middle and high school level, on the secondary level, um, they're not really trained on really how to teach young people. When I look at on a college campus, um, a lot of times they're just doing the book work, the practice work. They're not really putting anything into practice. And I don't know if they really understand how to separate the two. And so when you have uh, a deficit in the education system as a whole, because I don't really think our universities are really preparing teachers. And so when they're not preparing them, our districts are not also developing and coaching them, because our mindset shift for professional development is not what professional development really is. We really are having a compliance day and not really coaching and developing our teachers. And so the deficit, Andre, the gap is widening because we're not closing the gap for training our teachers. And so I think the deficit is all over on an elementary level, a middle school level, and a high school level, because right now they're just focusing on the compliance and they don't even know how to move and shift that thinking from the compliance and the curriculum to really developing their teachers in their building.
There's a lot of comments on here. Tracy Johnson says, by the way, congratulations, Tracy's last day. She's retiring tomorrow.
Oh,
Congratulations, Tracy.
congratulations,
Um,
Tracy.
but I see Natalie says it's on the screen, adult behavior, tell it. Um, Keisha Fletcher Bates says this, compliance and not commitment. People are, girl, you got an amen corner up in here with the educators. Brendan says yes for compliance and commitment. Tracy Johnson says the top down mentality has never worked. People know how to give tasks, but they don't know how to guide educators to looking within.
Yes.
Alana says, hey. Andre Jones says, great response. And Tracy Johnson says, many teachers don't see what the value in building relationships with students or families is. And then there's a question from Lamika Robinson who says, how can administrators or districts work with universities to get students prepared for teaching? Oh, my bad, Tracy. It's Friday. I was thinking, oh, don't ask me why I thought today was Thursday, but my bad.
I think we have to look at our placement for our student teachers. A lot of times we are placing student teachers in veteran teachers' classroom, someone that's been in the building the longest, someone that is in the mindset of getting ready to shift. I don't really think our districts are truly pairing teachers up with a accomplished teacher, and I'm putting that in air quotes, accomplished teacher, but someone that really is a true transformative educator in their classroom. I think we just place student teachers. And so if I'm placing a student teacher into somebody's classroom that is not a great teacher, then we're just continuing the cycle. And then it also depends on who's in charge of your district of that program as well, because we also have people in positions in overseeing things that should not be in that position, and they don't understand the work themselves. So they're just going to sit down with the university official and say, I could just place them anywhere. I don't really think we're very thoughtful about where we're placing teachers, whether it's in a school building, but that's the same thing as leaders too. When it's time for leaders to get placed in buildings, we're not always placing the person that's in training in the proper building as well to get trained by the right leader. We're just putting people in buildings because either people need some additional help because they're struggling, or because we say the enrollment is too high, but we're not really putting people with people that's really going to coach them and develop them the way that they need to be coached and developed as a teacher and a future administrator.
Tracy said, girl, titles with no results. So basically what you're saying is folk can't teach what they don't know,
You don't
and
know.
they can't lead where they won't go.
Correct.
So you put them in bad classrooms, and then you just keep producing bad teachers.
Yeah, because what behaviors are we rewarding? What problems are we actually trying to solve? And are we really talking about the misalignment showing up in education when we talk about from the top down, the vision of the district, the systems, and our leadership behaviors? I think all of those things go together. But when those things are not connected, we're never, ever going to see the results that we want to see in a district or in a building. We're always going to be gambling every single year because there's a huge misalignment in all of those areas.
The sad part about it is we're gambling literally, not just kids' futures, because what they produce in the future is also our future. So we literally roll the dice when we take that approach. Brandon says teachers are taught in order for them to become teachers, they must pass a test. So it will only be natural that when teachers come out into the field that they teach our students only to pass a test. That's good, Brandon.
And you and I always talk about, Coach, here, education malpractice. It goes back to
Didn't I tell you
that
if I had
misalignment.
it to do, I'd go back and sue for educational
Yeah,
malpractice, sue a
yeah.
district. I think until parents get that mindset, I think we will continually repeat the cycle. I'm going to move on. I'm going to ask the next question. When it talks about diagnosing the real problem, when a school feels stuck, what kinds of questions? I'm just going to speak from some schools that I know in lots of districts, not just in Columbus, in lots of districts. When a school feels stuck, what kinds of questions should leaders be asking themselves to uncover what's really holding progress back?
Well, um, what are we actually trying to solve for? So I'll just use my experience um, at Mifflin. When I got that assignment, I was like, I was like, is this a joke? They have me going over there to turn the school around, or really no resources, no plan of action. Like the district did not give me a plan of this is what you need to do to go over there and turn the school around. I did it by trial and error. I did it with my own experience, and that's where I felt I got battle tested. So for me, like, what problem am I trying to solve? And at the time, Coach, here, the climate and culture was completely off the chain at Mifflin Middle School. In that spring, you had several administrators that you pulled across the district and retired administrators in safety and security. And so in my mind, what problem am I trying to solve? I need to get the climate and culture together. And that was the only thing that I focused on that first year. I didn't talk about the curriculum. I didn't talk about the academics. I'm like, the problem that we need to solve here is the climate and culture. The problem that we need to solve here is to get kids in the classroom and them staying. If you get the kids in the classroom and you shift the climate and culture, the academics automatically came that year. And I was only solving for one problem. But the problem is we are rewarding bad behavior in districts and schools. We're not really sure. It goes back to what I said about that misalignment. We are misaligned from our visions and our systems. And so we're all over the place. So we're not really sure what problem we're trying to solve. We're going to be having teacher burnout. We're going to have student behaviors that are all over the place. And all we're going to have is individuals pointing the finger and blaming others and not really looking in the mirror. And so for me, I knew that I needed to solve one problem a year at Mifflin. I was not trying to solve a thousand problems. So I look at it as stuck schools often have the answers, but they just haven't had the right question asked to them yet. And so I feel like we know the answer. We just haven't had the right question asked of us of how we're going to solve the problem. And how do you even identify what the problem is?
I'm going to give you, as you can see, there are comments that are coming in. Allison says, what I've experienced when having student teachers placed in my classroom is that they are coming from the university with unrealistic, minimal expectations about the profession. Um, I've seen it. They don't understand the commitment involved with being a good teacher. Chiquita Torre asked the question. Hang on. Her question is, have we really helped folks excavate whether they should be in teaching or not? That's a good question.
That's a good question.
Like, why are you here? Is this really what you should be doing? Um, I think that those questions are important. And let's see what other folks are saying. Tracey said, in her role as CEA president, she coached many teachers out of this profession who were harming children. I
Yeah.
remember that, Tracey. You did do that, and it cost you, and it cost you.
But that's the same
Um,
thing for leaders coach here. I think we need to ask that same question when we're placing people to lead buildings and lead people. Are they the right individual to do that work? You know, when I would get assistant principals, I would always ask them, what's your end goal? Because if your end goal was to be a building principal at some point in your career, then our interaction, our relationship, and my coaching and the task that I gave you was going to be completely different. Now, if you wanted to be an assistant principal your whole entire year, then the coaching and the development and the task that I gave you would be different. But then also, how do we also have those transparent conversations, really difficult conversations with people to say, this is not the job for you. Everybody can't be an assistant principal. Everybody should not be an assistant principal or principal, but we just put bodies in these buildings and they don't know what they're doing. They have no idea. And it goes back to what I said initially at the beginning. They're just managing. They got trained to manage and not really trained how to lead people. And I think that's part of the problem in education.
Dr. Cynthia Tyson says the current state of education, it is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Schools were never created to cultivate critical thinking citizens. They were built to produce compliance, order, and a workforce that sustains existing systems. When we see conformity rewarded and questioning discouraged, that is not failure, that is design. Ooh, that's good.
That's a good one.
I would agree with that. Andre asked the question, Andre Lampkins, because there's two Andres on.
Hi,
Um,
Audrey.
that was who asked you your first question.
Mhm.
How can community members help teachers in meaningful ways? Oh God.
I think one thing, schools cannot thrive in the way that they need to thrive if the community is not behind them, if community partners are not behind them. I think one thing, Andre, I would suggest for you or any organization, if you're trying to work with a particular school or particular area, have a conversation or a meeting with the building administrator to really see what their vision, what their goal is, and how can you come in and support that initiative and that work. And one thing I would say when we talk about literacy, um, one thing I've been trying to do in the current role that I'm in for our elementary buildings is really to try to get our community partners and organizations to commit to 2 or 3 times a month to come in during the elementary students lunchtime and sit down and read with them. We really need individuals to come in and work with students one-on-one, mentoring them. And if that means reading a book with them, because students get better with their literacy, their comprehension, and their fluency when they read to somebody and somebody also is reading to them. If we can get more of the community to come into the schools and be mentors, a non-threatening person that can check in on students about their behavior, their academic, and their attendance. That's just a small nugget. I remember at South, we started report card conferences under the Diplomas Now program. And during the quarterly report card conferences, Will Ragland would have community partners come in and meet with kids about their report cards. I took that same initiative and did it at Mifflin Middle School. We did it quarterly. We try to get 50 to 100 volunteers to come in and meet with students that are not their parents or their guardians or their teachers in a non-threatening way to speak to them about their behavior, their academics, and their attendance. And some members, community members came every quarter. Those are just small things I think that the community can do, Andre, and businesses and organizations that can touch or near the schools that we serve.
Can I jump in, Tracey, and say for the folks who are not educators who are on from the community, can I say to you, it can't be about your agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Tracey said, what can you do to support the vision of what schools are trying to do? Some agencies, my office is in an elementary school. Some agencies come in with an agenda
Yeah.
that puts more work on overworked principals and teachers. And then they wonder why teachers and principals are doing this. It's not because they don't want community intervention. It's because community sometimes wants to do what they want to do versus what is needed in our schools. So it's coming and saying, what do you need? And then offering the thing that is needed, not trying to push off the thing that is your agenda. So for me, that's one of my pet peeves. And I do a lot of workshops for nonprofits, teaching them how to be better in working with schools. You've got lots of comments in here. Tracey said it cost her a position, but it saved many children when she was pushing people out. Joy says, I hear you saying. Chiquita Torre says, great point. Benita, I'll put some of these on so that you can see them. Benita says, as a coach and mentor to first year teachers, they are severely underprepared to teach urban students. Andre asked that question earlier. What is a deficit? And Benita is saying she was a PAR, so she's saying that when she was coaching and mentoring first year teachers, they're not prepared to teach the children that they're coming to teach. I think that that's important for us to talk about. Lots of comments. You guys are killing the comments tonight. Joy asked the question. She says, what is the climate or mindset of educators knowing that property taxes could eventually go away?
They're unaware. They're not even talking about it, saying they have no idea of the impact that's going to happen in schools. But then that also goes back again. I think you have a system where you have educators that a lot of them sometimes do not live in the areas of where they are teaching students. So they're not invested in the big picture of what's really happening that's impacting their students in the school system. And so a lot of times they're not even aware of it. And then a lot of times you have the top down in the school system, they're not even talking about it. They're not even bringing it to the forefront of the importance and what is getting ready to happen. And so that's also the sad part about it. No one currently right now has been talking about those changes that's going to happen, that's going to impact education.
I want to read you a couple of the comments. Tracy Johnson says, say that. Dr. Cynthia Tyson says, so true. They should be asking, what do you need and how can I make that happen? Uh, Former principal Stephanie Bland says, as a building principal, Stephanie says, hi, Mrs. Tracy says, hi, Mrs. Bland. As a building principal, we have to give that community partner a menu of how they can serve in your building. That keeps them focused on meeting the needs of the students. Benita said it's hard transition from student teaching in the suburbs to teaching in an urban district. And then she said she's tried to advocate for an incentive for teachers to live in the district where they teach. Those are some of the comments that are up. There's a question from a parent, and I will be candid. This is my grandbaby's mother asking this question. How, as a community, do we motivate parents to be more involved in their students' success? Change their mindset that school is simply a requirement and the students are the teacher's problem. How can we change that mindset? Hey, Chelsea. Hey, daughter.
They have to understand that this is a partnership. I would always say to my parents that I need for you to be involved. I think a lot of times guardians or parents feel they're very involved in the elementary. And then as they get older, the involvement dwindles away. And I would always say to my families, no, I need you involved. This is a partnership. Like your child's success, you play a part in that. I play a part in that. The teachers play a part in that. This is a team effort, and I need you to get on board. And one thing that I would do as a building administrator to make sure that I kept my parents and guardians involved, they would get a weekly auto dollar every Sunday. And they hated it. When I say they hated it with a passion, and they would let me know that they hated it. But then on the flip side, they were very happy because I kept them informed. I gave student expectations. I gave parent expectations. I gave staff expectations. I let them know this is what I need of them in order for their child to be successful in my school. I made sure I was intentional about the programming and the involvement that we did at Mifflin. I mean, we would have simple things of come eat lunch with a loved one.
Yep.
When we had math night and reading and literacy night, we were very intentional about making sure that it met the need of the child and the parent, but it didn't feel like it was elementary. So, how do we have programming that continues to get parents involved on the elementary, middle, and high school? And I would even say to my parents at South High School, like, no, I still need you involved. Like, your child is in high school, but I still need you to be involved, come to parent teacher conferences, be involved just like you are when you go to these sporting events. You need to be involved the same way that we go to these musicals, these sporting events for your child's academics, because your child academic is also dependent upon your involvement as a parent. So I would always say to them, I need you to help me make sure that your child is doing what they need to do when they come to school every day.
So Chelsea, Benita, who is an elementary school teacher, says talk, read, and write with your children from an early age. You already do that. That's why Ethan knows all his stuff. My baby is so smart. Keep them off technology as long as possible. I would have to echo that and agree
Yeah.
that if we can keep them off and not cave in, because we cave, y'all. We cave. Tracey says, as educators, we have to create an environment that makes it safe for parents to engage in their child's education. Sometimes teachers come off very superior, which turns off our families off. Chiquita says, let me see, where is it? Yes, high school, there's very little to no parent involvement in some of these high schools. This is when they should be more involved. I will say some high schools are not as creative or innovative when it comes to engaging parents. Jesse, I want you to talk a little bit about, because you talked about you are a transformative leader. You transformed a school. Because I started this off for folks who came in late. You stop talking about you're a transformative leader and your school ain't never been transformed. If you started on the bottom and you still there, you're not a transformative leader. Period. Tracey took a school, the lowest performing school, to number 2 in 4 years. And I believe she would have overtaken Dominion had she had one more year and COVID not hit. I'm just saying. And so Tracey, talk to us about some of the pragmatic. Sometimes we talk theoretically. When you talked about changing climate and culture, we have educators on here who need, both in their classrooms, but also building administrators who need some of the techniques that you use. Because I shout you out for these all the time. I'm like, that's why your kids are in the hallway. Ain't no hall passes unless you got to escort. Talk us about some of the pragmatic things that you did in that very first year, to one, help teachers with their classroom management, and two, to change the climate and culture of Mifflin Middle School.
Now, some people are not going to agree with what I did, but
let me stop for a second. They don't have to agree, but let me say this. Let me say this to you. Many of you have bought into the years of rhetoric that you've been fed, which means all you're producing is more rhetoric. The bottom line is results, and everything else is rhetoric. So you don't have to agree, but she got results. I'm just saying. So talk to us.
So my first year at Mifflin Middle School, I really only focused on the climate and culture. And one thing that I did, we put in uniforms. Students had school uniforms. We had no hall passes whatsoever. And so anytime a child wanted to move in that building, they had an escort, and teachers were on duty. So I'm a firm believer of teachers are on duty. I'm not that administrator that say teachers are not on duty. I believe teachers are on duty the first 15 minutes, like in the morning, during the day, and at the end of the day. And one thing I would say about the hall escort system was it built relationships with students and staff. And so teachers that didn't have kids in their classroom or in their grade band, they got to build relationships with other students. But hall escort was one thing that we put in place. And then I think the big climate and culture shift that was the big impact of Mifflin Middle School was our morning town hall. Andre Lamp, there's a couple people on here that have been to my morning town hall where speakers. So I think the teachers initially didn't believe my ideal or the concept. They went with it, but we had a morning assembly, and people like, why did you do this? We had a morning assembly every single day, and it was really our homeroom period. And the kids came into the auditorium every single day for the 7 years I was there. When we went to COVID, I did it online. But every day the kids came to our town hall, and that's where we really built a sense of community and belonging. But we put in a whole thing called Mifflin News, and we had a whole runner show and a whole program from start to finish. But it also allowed me as a building principal, it let me see how my day was going to be. So I got to see the whole school, staff and students. I could tell what adults were off. I could tell what kids were off, but it set the tone for the day. The students were involved. We recognized kids every day. We recognized staff every day. If it was for attendance, if it was a PBIS. And on Friday, we really had us, I'm not going to cuss on here, but we really had us a good time on Friday because we had an alter schedule, and Mr. Snyder, hats off to him, who was my school counselor, to address that college and career readiness. We had a different speaker come every Friday to speak to the students about being prepared, college and career ready. And I was saying Andre Lampkin because he has been to Mifflin numerous of times. But every Friday, that first Friday of the school year at Mifflin, my co-chair, the amazing T Street, we had a school-wide assembly the first 3 days of school. And people like, you had an assembly first 3 days of school? I said, yeah, because I'm in charge. And that's the thing with me. I'm not running a democracy. I am running a dictatorship. And we have to, kids like order, and you're not coming to any building that I'm ever going to be the principal of, and you're going to tell me what you want to do. That's never, ever going to happen. T, bless her, she came literally for 7 years. She even did it virtually for 7 years. That third day, because how at the time Columbus City Schools, we would start school on that Wednesday. So kids came Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And that Friday, we had a school-wide assembly. It was like a pet rally. T kicked it off for us. My honor roll assembly, my first speaker, the 7 years I was there, I never wavered. I told the committee, this is who I want to speak. This is who I want to set the tone for the building. Was my pastor, Dr. C. Dexter Wise. He didn't come and preach, but he had a message. He did it during COVID. And so you have to be strategic about and purposeful about what you're trying to accomplish, because the academics took care of itself. That year, I focused on the climate and culture, but I was very intentional about changing the behavior of the adults, making sure that I was coaching and developing them. We had, oh, I use you a lot, TS. I'm sitting up here thinking about it. I mean, I didn't use her like that. She was a good community partner for me on my journey at Mifflin. And so we had intentional professional development in the summertime, June and August. In my first year, T came and did our team building. We were at Ohio Dominican University. I will not forget this. We had a couple of speakers. So you have to be intentional about what you are trying to solve for the year. And each year, I only solve for one thing. I did not have 2 or 3 initiatives going on at Mifflin Middle School. And my theme each year determined what we were trying to solve for. And the teachers knew it. We're focused on the climate and culture. And before I left Mifflin, we had turned our morning town hall to Mifflin News. Kids were running it. So you teaching them about being an anchor, the technology. You're embedding all of these different skill sets, but also having them have ownership and pride in their school and what we're trying to accomplish. And by then, they knew we were on the road to become. If I would have stayed at Mifflin, we would have been a blue ribbon school, and we would have been a top middle school in Columbus City Schools because I spoke it every day to the kids. It was expected. I would always say to them, you're either going to meet my expectations or exceed them. And they heard that because we were pouring into them every single day. Now, was it a lot of tough love happening? Of course. But also, I trusted them. Because when my teachers were absent and we needed and students on hall duty, I had student ambassadors. They had lanyards. They would come get the walkies, sign it out. Didn't have any issue with any kids fighting in the bathroom with those student ambassadors, being disrespectful to them. So, but you have to map these things out. And again, it goes back to, what are you trying to solve for each year? What are you trying to accomplish in your building? And that was the turning point for us at Mifflin Middle School with shifting that climate and culture. It just took that 1 year to shift the climate and culture. And the sad part about it, I don't even think people believed that we could come over there and do it. And I keep saying we, because I didn't do it by myself. Yeah. I had an awesome.
When I see Yvonne is on here, and she talked about how selective you were in choosing your teachers for your school. Yeah. And she was one of them.
Yep. Yvonne Robertson. I was very selective, but I also trusted people that were my mentors. They're still my mentors, or people that coached me. Because I was like, we have to have the right people in here to shift the mindset. And we didn't have listen, we had a perfect staff. Now, there was definitely people at Mifflin Middle School that was fighting against what I was trying to do for students. Again, listen to, there were adults fighting against what I was trying to do, didn't like the change, didn't like being held accountable. And my thing is, if you want me to hold the students accountable, I'm going to hold you accountable as well. And then I just don't believe, the students knew if they came to the office, and this is Tracey Colson's philosophy, you going home. I'm not, you acting a fool, you cussing people out, you not following the rules, you're going home. And our suspension, I think, was it, Coach Hill, when I inherited Mifflin, they had over almost 2,500 out of school suspensions. And one thing I appreciated with Miss Pettis, who at the time was my executive director over middle school, I said, I'm telling you, it's going to work. I did not have peak. I did not have in-school suspension. I had a meeting with parents and students about the expectations. And if you come to this office for anything, you are going home. Now, it might be for a day, it might be for 10 days, but the kids knew I was no nonsense. They knew that I was fair. I did not play favoritisms whatsoever. I remember I had a student in my building, and their parent was an elected official, and she got into an altercation, and I suspended her. You would have, when I say everybody and their mama from downtown called me so fast, I said, no, she gonna say suspended. Do you think you can do in school? Do you think she can do? No. She got in a fight, an altercation. If it was another child, they would have been suspended. She gonna stay suspended. I said, now I'm more than welcome to have another conversation with the parent, but she is going to stay suspended because you would not be calling me about anybody else's child that got in a fight or suspended. So I just think we have to remember our why. It's about student achievement, but how do we get there? And I think people have to give it time. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to feel like you're on an island by yourself. But if you have a great team, it's going to be all, like, I would literally take that staff that I had at Mifflin and take them to another building and turn around another school. I would do it. I would do it, or I would build another team. But again, like Ms. Robertson said, those questions were asked of people in their interview. I was very transparent about the work and the commitment. When you're working for me, these are the expectations. I was very committed about coaching and developing the teachers. We had Saturday PDs. We had, I kept with the same consultants. My whole 7 years, I did not waver. There were several different vendors that were trying to come to Mifflin, like co-chair said, that's what I call T, the amazing T Street. I call her my co-chair. I said, no, thank you for coming, but no, I don't need your services, because also too many outside partners can be detrimental to the work that you're trying to accomplish.
Yep.
Because again, people are trying to come for their own agenda and not the agenda that we have lined out in the school. And so those students matriculated up to Mifflin High School, and the principal and the teachers could see the shift and the change of the students that were coming. I think before I left, what, my second or third year, we started to have a wait list of
It
students
was a wait list.
getting into Mifflin. But then also, it takes time and commitment. If you were a new student coming to Mifflin, you had a new student orientation, and people were like, you took time to do that. So if you started 2 weeks after school was over with, any student that was new had to sit down with an administrator, whether it was my assistant principal, myself, and all of my support staff. I put together a welcome letter. I put together a checklist, and we met with the family and the child about the expectations at Mifflin. And this is what is going to happen when you come here. We had a student success store. So if you needed a uniform, we can go get those things. I'm going to remove all the barriers for your child when they are coming to any school that I'm over, because I want them to be clear about, you are here to get an education. Your job is to get an education, and that's it. And so you're not going to use any excuse. And so those are things, being intentional as a leader and making sure. I was only trying to solve for one thing each year. And my first year was developing a clear, concise climate and culture, being very strategic about the things that I put in place, and being consistent and not wavering because somebody didn't like it, or because somebody said this takes too much time. And parents didn't want to have no new student orientation. But once they got there and they had it, and they seen the number of people that was wrapping their arms around their child to make sure to set them up for success, who doesn't want that?
Tracey, there's a question from Kaylee. The question she has is, leaders often define success in terms of vision and outcomes, but have you ever asked students how transformation feels on the ground? What does real change look like through their eyes?
Ooh, real change look like through the students' eyes? That's a good question. I think for the students at Mifflin Middle School, I would say the eighth graders, my first year, they probably was my favorite class. They seen and felt it because they were there as sixth and seventh graders. So they seen the difference from when they were there as sixth and seventh graders to now eighth graders, that there was a system put in place to ensure that they were going to be safe, that they were going to get educated, and that there were going to be opportunities for them to be successful, but then also preparing them for high school. I don't think at the time the students at Mifflin thought that there was going to be, I think they really thought we was just going to come in there and do like everybody else. And I think showing them something different, they had a little bit of voice, I would say. You think, Miss Robertson? I gave them a little bit of voice, and a platform and an opportunity to have input in the change that was happening as we continued throughout those years at Mifflin.
I would agree. One of the things that I noted, Tracey, in your kids is the number of kids who felt confident in their academic ability when they were leaving, and they weren't necessarily all matriculating to Mifflin. I remember when your kids were applying to COS,
Yeah.
and feeling like they were ready. Cause for people who are not from Columbus is the number one school, not just in Columbus, but in the region. And it has been for like the last 30 years. And it's an all lottery school. And so I remember the first year that your kids were feeling confident and they were applying to Cause and Centennial and Fort Hayes and some of the highest performing schools, and not just going right into their neighborhood school. I mean, I saw that as a sign of kids believing that the change and really believing in themselves. I remember the year that your kids were striving for to move from number 3 to number 2.
Mm.
And I remember coming on that Friday,
Yeah.
the first week, and you put the target up. And I think giving kids, when you talk about giving kids voice, I think that this is a part of it. We don't talk about scores with the kids. We tell them what they're not accomplishing, but we don't tell them what the goals are and how to help them get there. And we don't make them a part of getting there. I remember when you put the target up. And then I remember the next year in September when the scores came out, when you gathered us all to come to Mifflin, when you knew and you had told the partners and your community people that you had met the goal, but the kids didn't know, and you walked into that auditorium that day. You would have thought you were there for a pep rally for a sporting event.
Mm-hmm.
But you got up and you said, okay, Mifflin, y'all sixth graders, this doesn't apply to you. Seventh and eighth graders, this applies to you, because you all know that last year we had a goal. And up on, you said, what was the goal? And the kids start chanting, beat Ridgeview, beat Ridgeview. And up on the screen came Ridgeview and the target that had been up there the last year. And then you showed the score and you showed that that the kids had beat Ridgeview.
Yeah.
And the kids went I'll never forget that feeling. I had goosebumps. The skin on the hair on my arms was standing up. The kids were cheering because they had overtaken the number 2 school. And I remember what you said to them. And this is when you talk about student agency, you said to them, at Mifflin, when we meet a goal, what do we do? They started screaming, set another goal. And up on the screen came the target and it said Dominion.
Mm-hmm.
That day for me was transformative because you had teachers who now believed, but you had kids who believed. And Kaylee, to answer your question about what it looks like through the lens of kids, the year that she left,
Mm-hmm.
another principal came who didn't have high expectations for the kids. They knew the difference. The students were saying to this new principal, oh, that's not the Mifflin way. We don't do that here. To which she replied, this is a new day.
Mm-hmm.
And I would meet kids and they'd be like, our school is a wreck. It's crazy. I'm transferring. And it was back to the same mentality, which I think, Tracey, takes me to a question that I had earlier and someone else had it there as well. Sustainable change.
Mm.
What separate schools that experience temporary improvement from those that sustain? What is it that makes the difference between temporary improvement and sustained transformation over time?
Oh, clear leadership pipeline. So the problem, Mifflin could have sustained the change if we would have transitioned the right leader there. And so, temporary change, I say, relies on people's personality because, again, the adults in our systems, we don't do what's best for kids. We do the opposite. So, consistency with the coaching structure. So, if I would have, I think anyone that has transformed a school and they're leaving an organization or a school on top, what's the transition? Do you want to consult with the individual to see if they have an idea of who should have taken over the school? I had someone in mind that would have been the perfect person that would have continued the work and the progress of Mifflin Middle School to where they probably would have been the number 1 middle school in the district. And so I think we don't have a clear leadership pipeline. And so when we don't have a clear leadership pipeline, we're always going to have temporary change because we're constantly moving people in the wrong seats. And so when we're constantly moving people in the wrong seats, you're never going to get sustainable change. And so that relies on the system. So that goes back to how systems are broken when we are putting leaders and teachers in positions. We're not putting always the right individual to hold that seat or to drive that car. And so we're never going to get sustainable change. There's always going to be temporary because we feel like we don't need to consult the person that has left, or which I think that's crazy. You should be consulting the person. And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whew, that's a whole nother conversation about sustainable change. But I just think we don't got the right leaders in the seat. We have people that we like, not the people that can go in there and do the work and for us to see the change. And so when we don't see sustainable change and we only see temporarily, because I think it's also about having these clear alignments and these clear leadership pipelines. We don't have it. We think we have it. We have a, I'm putting in air quotes, we have something, but it's not working.
Because if it were working, we would see more transformative schools.
There you go.
Great.
There you go.
I'm gonna transition us because I want us to get to these last couple of questions. At what point should a school or a district consider bringing in external expertise, and what should they be looking for in a consulting partner?
Oh, oh, Jesus.
Let's start. Well, you're a consulting partner. What should they be looking for in a consulting partner?
Well, I think someone that has done the work before and that has proven
Really?
results. I think let's start there with the basics. I think someone that truly has done the work, and they have the evidence to prove that they have done the work. Um, but then what's their skill set? I think a lot of times districts and schools, we bring in consultants and that's not their skill set. Or they feel like, and I'll just use me as an example. At Mifflin, I was very clear about the different consultants that I had come in because I only tapped into people that this is their skill set. So I tapped in a consultant that they love data, they all about data, they can deliver the message. I tapped into another consultant and they were really about that relationship and having people look in the mirror about their core values and beliefs. I was very clear about tapping in a consultant that really understood the school improvement process. And so stop tapping into people that don't have the results or the evidence of the work, or it has been sustainable. It's only been temporary because, we have people that have written books and they've shown success for a year, but it hasn't been sustainable. And so I think really interviewing them and really doing their homework. And for me, I will always tell people, I could give you names of people to speak to. If you want to consult me out, to come in and coach you and help develop you as a leader or your assistant principal or your teachers, that takes a lot of time. People have to be coachable. They have to want to be coached. And so when you look at the education system, and I talked about this on my TC leadership lens about everyone needs a coach. I have a coach. I got 3 of them. I have people to tell me things that I don't want to hear when I think I know it all, because I don't know it all. I need to have somebody that's going to bring you back down to reality and put you in your place, but then also build you back up, let you think about your idea, what you're trying to do. What is the goal? What are you trying to solve for? I always get that asked me my coaches. When I call them, either I'm complaining or I'm trying to do something, they always say, what are you trying to solve for, Tracey? What are you trying to accomplish? And so I think we have too many people that think they know the work, but they really don't know the work or understand it. And so I just looked at a comment: when we think we know it all or don't have time to learn more, it's time to retire. That is correct.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you're in a leadership position in education and you don't have a true mentor, I just went to a conference and they talked about mentorship versus sponsorship.
Yep.
How you move from mentorship to sponsorship. That sponsor is going to be all in. of developing you to your next. They're going to help you look at all the pieces of the puzzle in your current role, and are you putting that puzzle together? They're going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And, I think I can literally call all of my coaches right now. I can call them during the middle of the day. I can text them and they're going to respond. Because when I call or text during the day, that means I have a problem. I need a thought partner. And so, ooh, that's a good one. I think the initial is knowing what you're trying to solve for will determine what type of consultant you need to have come into your building. But if you don't know what you're trying to solve for and you're listening to the noise, and when I say the noise, district or other people, you're always going to bring in the wrong consultant. I didn't listen to anyone in the district tell me what consultants to bring in at Mifflin the whole time I was there.
No, you didn't.
And they were trying to push 2 consultants on me because everybody else in the district was using this consultant. I said, nope, I have my own people. And so how do you drown out the noise and really sit in a space and really map out what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish as a building administrator? And then that would determine what type of consultant you need and who's actually has done the work and understand the work.
That's good. Tracey, one of the things that I want to get to as we close is for educators who are listening, who know that they want more for their schools but aren't sure of the next step. And can I just say to educators, it's okay to not be sure. It's okay to not know it all. But the sadness is when you know you don't know it all and then you don't seek help. In every area of my life, when I don't know something, I go looking for the answers. I go looking and seeking. What's one piece of advice that you'd offer as they begin exploring deeper professional learning and support? And what kinds of learning and supports do you offer through your consulting business?
I think deeper support, I think people need to start with clarity and not urgency. I think we're just in a rush. We're just always in a rush. We're just like, these kids got to pass the test. They got to pass the test. Let's just sit with clarity and not urgency. What's the problem? What's the solution for it? And are you really investing in developing and coaching? And I think we need to slow down. When we are moving at 1,000 miles per minute, we're missing it. And so I think leadership is heavy. Like, this is a thankless job in a row. And so it's heavy, it's tiring, it's draining, but it's also rewarding. I probably will retire as a building principal. And, people, I think, get in central office because they want to get away from the kids. They want to get away from the teachers. They want to get away from being boots on the ground. My goal is to go back and retire as a building administrator, co-chair, and probably turn around another school because I like a challenge. But I also enjoy that work. I think that's my sweet spot. I understand the work. I understand what it takes to turn around a school. I also understand what it takes to turn around a district, just sitting in this role for the past 4 years. And I think, how do we care for leaders while asking them to care for everyone else? I think is a big thing. And so I always try to be intentional about the teacher leaders that worked for me, and my assistant principal. And so knowing all of those different things, I think people should just slow down, get some clarity about what they're trying to accomplish, and everything is not urgent. And so when you look at TC Education Consultant, my sweet spot is really, that turnaround piece. I can put together a whole plan for you for turning around your school, coaching, building administrators, coaching assistant principals, in developing. When we look at athletes, they all got coaches. They
Yep.
got position coaches, they got a strength coach, they have a coach to help them develop to be the best athlete. Why don't we have coaches for educators? And I mean, every piece of the puzzle of being in education, we all need a coach. So my other area is coaching, putting on workshops, professional developments. I love those, putting on workshops, coming and putting in professional development, but coaching and developing, sitting down, working with the building administrator, mapping out a plan for student success in their building is definitely my sweet spot. But then also working with community partners. How do you align your work and get the right community partners to come in and support your cause and your initiative? I did it as a building principal. I'm currently doing it in the role that I'm in now. Um, the role that I'm in now, the district that I'm in, they did not have any type of partnership alignment. They didn't even know where to start or to begin. And I took what I did at Mifflin and I put together a partnership alignment for partners to be able to come in and work with districts. And so those are just a little bit things that are going to be that you can get from TC Education Consultant. I share with you, I don't have the flyer and I'll have it, it'll be out this week, but I'm doing a coaching series in this summer where people can sign up. They'll get 3 workshops and 3 one-on-one coaching sessions with me this summer.
And if you want to
No,
know how to access her, Tracy's, if you look on the screen, y'all, that's how you access Tracy, TC Ed Consulting at gmail.com. That's how you can reach her. I really want to encourage you, if you are a teacher, if you're a building administrator, if you are a school district who is interested in transformational leadership in education, I really want to encourage you to use someone who has actually done the transformation. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge proponent of Tracy's work. There are a lot of folks on here who are saying, "Hey, Ari is on here." Tracy saying that. Allison said,
sorry.
Ari, you missed him earlier. He said Colson, one of the most dynamic transformational school leaders. Allison says, come to California. Allison, all it takes is a contract, baby. All it takes is a contract. Shauna Gibbs said, we would love to have you back. Courtney is like, absolutely bullseye. You're hitting it. Kayla, you asked the question, how do we distinguish? And I'm not going to let Tracy answer this, and I'm going to tell you why. How do we distinguish between real mentorship and relationships that are supportive but ultimately superficial? I'm doing my very next coffee with tea on the difference between coaches, mentors, and sponsors. And I'm bringing folks on in all three realms. And so one of the things, I hope that you will come back for the next coffee with tea in 2 weeks from today, so that we can have this really dynamic discussion, not just in education, but in our own personal lives and in other professional arenas where folks don't know the difference between a coach and a mentor and a sponsor. I had someone who used to be a sponsor and over the last 2 years has moved into the role since I lost one of my core mentors and is now in that role as a mentor and literally coached me in and mentored me into my next job. And so I really want to do a show on that. But Tracy, I'm so grateful, one, for your leadership. Everywhere that you go, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's in a building or whether it's at a district level, you have practiced educational excellence.
Oh,
And
thank
so
you.
I want to thank you for the transformative work that you've done. I hope that people will avail themselves if they're looking. You guys can get, she said that she's got a package coming out where you can actually get one-on-one consulting with her. If you were a teacher, she was a dynamic teacher in the classroom. I always tell her she was a principal long before she was a principal. When she was a teacher, the principal was using her as an assistant principal to literally do climate and culture in a building. But I put her information back on. Make sure that if you're looking for a good consultant around educational transformation, that you think about TC Educational Consulting with Tracey Colson. Tracey, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Thank you for sharing your heart. And really, thank you for sharing your hard truth. We're grateful. People are giving comments. I'm going to put them on. By the way, when I was cheering Beat Ridgeview, which is what your kids did do, Natalie put on there with the upside down smiley face, Beat Ridgeview. Because yeah, she is the principal
I
at
love
Richview.
it. No, thank you, Coach, here for having me on. It has been a pleasure and a lot of fun. Thank you to everyone that has come on and asked questions. This has been a blast. This was a great evening. I enjoyed myself. But yes, if you need some consulting, please reach out. I am available. And thank you again, Coach, here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm putting the comments on the screen so you can see them. Um, Allison is saying thank you. Stephanie Bland is saying awesome interview. Ari says hi. Let me see. I'm moving to make sure I get. Lamika says thank you, T and Tracey. This podcast topic was amazing. Andre is giving lots of claps. Chiquita, thank you, Chiquita, for coming on. All the folks who came on tonight, you guys, thank you for coming on and flooding the comments. Ari says, love that we're hosting this. Carla Hagee, hey Carla. Hearing so many good things about you from T, had to come and see. Carla is one of the freshman seminar teachers. She's the freshman seminar teacher at Beechcroft, and I talk about you all the time. Everybody knows that. Courtney says, my sisters are cold. I'm so proud of you. Hire these two giants. I love the idea. Earlier, Andre had something in there for us, Tracey. He had a title. He had a title for what we, based off of something you said. He said, it sounds like, here it is, sounds like a great contracting idea for your consultancy firm, turnaround team.
Yes.
Taking all the members of your team and put them together and showing folks how you do that. Chiquita says there was a blueprint, systems were in place, schools like systems with protocol and procedures. Yvonne said, change equals consistency, safety, and community. Lots of great feedback tonight. I'm grateful to you all for coming on and holding space for us and with us. And so until the next time, I'm the amazing T Street. You all know that there is absolutely positively nothing amazing in me that's not in each and every one of you. And by the way, come on at 7:35 in the mornings and catch Monday through Friday Coffee with Tea, a real quick motivational message every morning. Have a great and amazing rest of your evening. Thanks.